Video games based on movies are more times than not, they're bad. But every once in a while, you get a gem like Alien Isolation or Shadow of Mordor. Today on Chaos Gaming, I want to check out some movies that actually need their own video game. When I say need their own game, I'm not talking about a random tie-in game or something low effort. I'm talking about a true high-effort video game made by a team truly passionate about bringing the film to life. Drop a like and let me know one movie that you think deserves a good video game. Let's start off with 300. Yep, a movie that actually got a PSP game back in 2007, but you probably didn't even know that because it flew so far under the radar, it was terrible. 300 seems like a super obvious choice for a video game, and I'm honestly surprised that it hasn't happened. It was a comic series by the legendary Frank Miller, written in the late 90s. Then it got the Zack Snyder movie adaptation in 2007 that many consider to be one of his best films. To me, 300 seems like an obvious choice for a giant, gory, stylish hack-and-slack adventure game. Now, I guess we got something similar in the form of Rise, Son of Rome, but come on. That game was pretty memorable because of the lackluster story and shallow combat. It looked good, but that was about it. Picture this. A hack-and-slash in the same style as Rise, but based on 300 with much bigger battles, a way better story, and much deeper combat, and buckets of blood and gore. Now, despite the movie being almost 14 years old, which is crazy to think about, I think people would love a game based on this property. Next up, Pirates of the Caribbean. Now, there's been a few video games based on the Pirates of the Caribbean series, but it's been almost a decade since the last one. Plus, there were a couple of really awesome ones that never got released. Now, I'm sure some of you remember Lego Pirates of the Caribbean, and I'm sure you remember Pirates of the Caribbean Online, but let me run something by you. A Pirates of the Caribbean open world RPG. You decide what treasures you go after, what towns you attack or defend, what other pirate gangs you befriend or attack. And all throughout the game, characters from the movie act as either quest givers or the villains for side missions. There actually was something like this in development a long time ago called Pirates of the Caribbean Armada of the Damned, but it was canceled back in 2010. So basically picture Assassin's Creed Black Flag, but with more RPG elements and a story that ties into the various Pirates movie. Would it be cool? Yes. Next up, this is my biggest ask. KINGSMAN. Probably one of the best action movies to come out in the last decade. The first KINGSMAN, released in 2014. It was great. The writing, the action, critical acclaim. The sequel dropped a few years later, and it wasn't as good, but it was still fun to watch. KINGSMAN has a great blend of big shootouts, high-stake punch-ups, which I think makes it a great choice for a video game. You can have some levels of the game be shootouts, other sections could be Arkham-style beat-em-up, you could have stealth sections, all complete with the awesome music and style that the KINGSMAN series is known for. Now, there's been one or two mobile games, I think, but no full-fledged console or PC game. And why not? Everybody loves KINGSMAN. Next up is the DCEU. It's pretty clear that it's been insanely hit or miss throughout the years, and even when it's on top of its game, it's not that amazing. But why hasn't anyone given it its own video game? I feel like it could actually win over a lot of people. The DCEU may not be fun to watch, but I have a weird feeling it would actually work as a video game. Think of the Avengers game that came out last year, but replace it with the DCEU, patch up the bugs, add a more in-depth story, and boom. You've got a video game that, no, it isn't anything groundbreaking or mind-blowing, but it would be fun. I mean, we haven't gotten a Justice League game in a long time, and there's a ton of missed potential there. I know. There's a Suicide Squad game in the works, and there's another Batman game in the works, but why not a full-fledged DCEU game? Even if you're not a fan of the DC movies, you have to at least check it out, right? You would. Maybe a darker, grittier tone? I don't know. How about Inception? Hear me out. Tell me if this sounds like something you would play. A roguelike third-person action stealth game with procedurally generated levels, all based on Inception. You play as the team from the movie, carrying out various jobs, diving into people's dreams, and trying to extract information. It would be a super high-stakes, super precision-based stealth game where one mistake could mean the entire dream collapses if you screw up. And then you have to go all the way back to the beginning, and the job resets with a new, randomly generated level layout. Then, just like in the movie, the further you get into the subject's dream, the harder the game becomes and the higher the stakes get. Basically, a tactical roguelike based on Inception. I think this would be a win. At number 5, you can't go wrong with Die Hard. It's one of those movies that everybody knows, everybody's seen it, and it even has a handful of video games based on it, but we have yet to get a good one. Throughout the years, we've gotten some crappy titles. We've got Die Hard Vendetta, Die Hard Trilogy, Die Hard Nakatomi Plaza, but hear me out. What if we got a full-fledged AAA Die Hard game based on the very first movie? What if you were basically allowed to run around the building from the first Die Hard movie and your whole objective is to learn how to navigate the tower, figure out the passages, pick the terrorist off one by one. Then you could have segments of stealth as well as high-octane shootouts, just like we saw in the movie. Think Batman Arkham Asylum, but set in a giant skyscraper and you've got guns instead of Batman gadgets. I mean, Die Hard can make for an awesome video game if it was done right. At number 4, RoboCop. There's another franchise that's had a lot of video games over the years, but almost all of them were complete and utter crap. Now, there have been a handful of RoboCop shooters and a handful of RoboCop platformers, but what I'm thinking is an open-world RoboCop game. Think Crackdown, but in the RoboCop universe. You play as the character, you upgrade your arsenal, you take out various gangs, terrorists trying to take control of the city. Plus, there's been a ton of RoboCop movies and TV shows throughout the years, so the devs would have lots of villains and robots to pull from, or they could just make an original story. RoboCop's universe is seemingly begging to be made into a video game, but it seems like nobody really wants to give it a try. Next up, Netflix Punisher. Let me be specific here. I know it's kind of cheating because this is a TV show instead of a movie, but you can't tell me you don't want a video game based on the Punisher show, the Netflix version. The Punisher ran for 2 seasons, but it garnered a giant following thanks to the acting, the storytelling, and the action. It was also pretty cool to see a more mature and much smaller scale story being told within the MCU. Now, there's a handful of Punisher games throughout the years, some I've talked about on this channel, but so far, nothing based on the Netflix version. To me, it's a no-brainer. This version was popular, it had a ton of great action and characters, and it's part of the MCU, so it would turn a profit no matter what. In terms of gameplay, I'm picturing something like a stealth shooter that allows you to take levels or either guns blazing, totally stealthy, whatever you want to do. Awesome takedown moves, you could perform on enemies, sneak up on them, basically think Wolfenstein: The New Order, but in third person, with Frank Castle as the main character. And speaking of Marvel, the MCU. Do you guys remember back in the early days of the MCU? Every new movie got a video game. Now granted, those were back in the days when movie games were common. There were Iron Man games that were terrible. There was a Thor game, which was terrible. There was a Captain America game, it was decent. You guys get the picture, but picture this. A full-fledged giant action adventure game based on all the MCU up to this point. Up until about 2015, there was quite a few MCU video games, even a Lego one, but after Age of Ultron, Marvel gave up. Now this could have a gigantic game if we wanted to cover the entire Infinity Saga, but picture the end result. The game would progress in chronological order, starting with the first Captain America movie and then eventually ending with Spider-Man Far From Home, which would allow you to play as lots of characters while reliving all the major battles of the MCU, or maybe even letting you alter the results of certain fights. I'm shocked that we don't have a true MCU game yet. To me, it's a no-brainer. And at number 1 today, Rambo. Now, I have a burning hatred for the Rambo game we got a while back, not only because of how bad it was, but it also robbed everybody of something that could have blown us away. It's one of the longest-running, most beloved action movie franchises of all time, but it never caught up in the video game world. There's been a handful throughout the decades, and the one that you probably remember is the god-awful 2014 one. Since then, Rambo has appeared in other games like Broforce and Mortal Kombat 11, but I think it's time that Rambo gets his own good video game. Imagine a third-person action stealth game set on a variety of large open-ended worlds, kind of like Resident Evil or Wolfenstein: The New Order. You go in guns blazing, use the environment to your advantage, sneak around. A Rambo game with actual effort could put it into one of the best movie games of all time, but I have my doubts it'll ever happen. The 2014 Rambo game was so hated, nobody wants to touch the license. There you have it. Those are movies that deserve a good video game. Let us know one we didn't mention, and I'll see you soon.